Her hand was already halfway to my shoulder when I stepped back. The music didn't stop. The chatter didn't pause. The world kept spinning in its polite little orbit of holiday cheer, but in my chest, everything stalled. She blinked at me. Once. Twice. I leaned in just enough for her to hear me over the saxophone. Not after what you did. Her fingers froze in the air like they'd lost permission to move. Her mouth parted slightly. I could see the exact moment her brain realized I wasn't playing along this time. I didn't wait for her to speak. I turned, walked straight past the champagne tower, past two interns kissing under the mistletoe, past her boss, the one who probably still thought I was some artsy, unemployed husband, past the bathroom where it all started 3 weeks ago. Let me repeat that, the bathroom. Because this story doesn't begin with love, or romance, or trust. It begins with a bathroom stall door that didn't quite close all the way. It begins with a whisper I wasn't supposed to hear. He still doesn't know? I don't even feel guilty anymore. And a giggle. Hers. Rowan. You know what's messed up? I wasn't even looking for her. I had just come to drop off her charger. She'd forgotten it again, 3rd time this month. Classic Rowan. The receptionist let me up because she always talked about how sweet I was. Said I was husband goals. Yeah, husband goals. I was walking past the hallway that led to the restrooms when I heard it. And for 1 second, one stupid, hopeful second, I told myself it was someone else. Until I heard the second voice. His voice. His. David. David, whose stupid car I had jump-started last winter. David, who borrowed my gaming headset when his broke during some company retreat. David, who fist-bumped me last month and said, "Man, Rowan's lucky. You're solid." He laughed in the stall and said, "You should just tell him. He's probably too soft to leave you anyway." And she didn't argue. She just said, "Maybe after the holidays." So yeah, the party wasn't a coincidence. It was a test. She wanted to see if I'd play along. If I'd still be her trophy for the night. If I'd stand beside her while she wrapped herself in that green velvet dress, the same one she wore the night we got engaged, and pretended like our life wasn't one long, rotten performance. But I didn't. Not this time. She reached for me, and I whispered back, "Not after what you did." She didn't follow me right away. That was the first surprise. I half expected her heels clicking after me, her urgent whisper saying my name like it still had weight. But instead, I walked through that overpriced rooftop venue alone, my heart knocking unevenly against my ribs, one breath behind a full-blown panic spiral. My glass was still on the edge of the fireplace where I left it. Warm, untouched, like me. I picked it up and sipped, and for a second I could see us from the outside. 2 people at a Christmas party. She, stunning in a dress that demanded attention. Me, stiff, overdressed in a jacket I borrowed from my brother because I don't do parties like this. I don't belong in rooms where people say things like, "Let's circle back after Q1," without irony. But I was never supposed to be background noise in my own marriage. Yet somehow, I had become exactly that, a placeholder. A warm body for the holidays. The man who makes sure the Amazon returns get dropped off and the dog gets his heartworm pills. You know what's funny? I used to think she was clever. Always 3 steps ahead. Always calculating, curating, controlling the narrative. But the longer I let myself look, really look, the more I realized she was just careless. Sloppy even. Because once I knew, I started noticing everything she thought I'd never catch. Like the second toothbrush in the guest bathroom that didn't match ours. The one she said she kept for her sister, who hadn't stayed over in almost a year. Or how she suddenly needed to charge her phone in the kitchen every night, which just happened to be the one corner of the apartment where the Wi-Fi mysteriously cut out. And how every morning, her phone would be warm, freshly used, battery drained, like it had spent the night working overtime. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted to. God, I wanted to rip the Band-Aid off and scream in her face, demand names, timelines, reasons, but I knew she'd twist it. She always does. She'd cry, tell me I'm paranoid. Remind me of that one time I accused her of flirting with the neighbor and she was just being friendly. I still apologize for that. Even now. So I started collecting proof. Quietly. Like a coward. Or maybe like a man who knew she didn't deserve the benefit of the doubt, but couldn't let go without the full picture. That's how I found the hotel receipt. Wedged in a book she borrowed from me. A weird, poetic slap in the face. The book was about betrayal. And tucked between pages 134 and 135, there it was. Room 402. Two guests. No business name listed. Just a sleek, black folder with her initials signed in rushed cursive. And the date? Exactly 2 days before our 6th anniversary. While I was at home baking her favorite cinnamon scones from scratch, she was unzipping someone else's coat in a midtown hotel and texting me, "Wish you were here, two hearts." That's when it clicked. She wasn't clever. Just practiced. She'd done it long enough to stop hiding it properly. She'd gotten comfortable with lying because she thought I'd never look. Because I never had before. And the worst part? She was right. I had loved her so blindly that I gave her every excuse. Every out. Every soft landing. And she used all of them like stepping stones to someone else's bed. So yeah, when she finally came out to the balcony 20 minutes after I'd walked away, her voice small, her tone trembling, her face painted with that look of, "I can fix this." I didn't let her speak first. I turned to her slowly and said, "You were never careful enough, Rowan." She flinched like I'd used her full name as a weapon. Maybe I had, but that was just the beginning. Because I hadn't told her what I'd done with the information yet, or who I'd sent it to, or that I wasn't the only one who knew anymore. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. I just sat in the living room with the lights off, the dog curled at my feet, and the silence pressing down on me like a wet blanket. I must have replayed the entire year 1,000 times in my head. All the times she came home late with damp hair and a lazy smile. All the times she said she was crashing early and pulled the blanket over her head before I'd even finished brushing my teeth. And every time I thought I'd reached the limit of how much it could hurt, some new memory would hit me sideways, like the playlist she made last summer called Us. Turns out most of those songs had nothing to do with me. At exactly 3:17 a.m., I pressed send. I had spent hours compiling everything. The receipt. The audio recording from the bathroom stall. Yes, I went back the next day and dropped a cheap mic in the vent. Her texts. Screenshots. Even the Instagram photo she swore was just a work lunch, but if you zoomed in behind her sunglasses, you could clearly see the reflection of him sitting across from her, holding her hand. I sent it all to a single email address. HR@devonandwells.com. Her company. I didn't write a note. No angry monologue. No emotional plea. Just a folder named Internal Conduct Breach and a timestamp. Let them figure out what to do with it. I wasn't even sure I was doing it out of revenge. Maybe a little. But mostly, I was exhausted. Exhausted from carrying the weight of her deception in private while she smiled in public and called me her rock, like I was some stable piece of furniture she never intended to honor. The moment the file uploaded, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. It was done. There was no taking it back now. I didn't know what the consequences would be, if they'd fire her, investigate, ignore it altogether. But I needed someone else to see it. I needed it to exist outside of me, outside of my head. Because up until that moment, it still felt like a nightmare I hadn't fully woken from. She came home the next morning like nothing happened. Like we hadn't locked eyes at the party. Like I hadn't whispered a sentence that should have broken her in half. She was humming. Humming. She kissed my cheek and asked if I wanted eggs or oatmeal. I stared at her like she'd grown a second face. And when she noticed the tension, she tilted her head and gave me that fake concerned look she always used when she sensed she'd gone too far. "Are you mad at me?" she asked, wide-eyed. I didn't answer. She sighed dramatically, put the pan down, and turned to face me fully. "Is this still about last night?" she said. "You embarrassed me, Silas. In front of everyone. You couldn't have just waited until we got home to be weird?" I just stared. She got louder. "You're not some tragic movie husband, okay? You don't get to play mysterious and cryptic and ruin events because you feel weird inside." And that's when I finally spoke. Calmly. Quietly. No anger. Just cold. "I sent it to your company." She blinked. Like she didn't understand English. "Sent what?" I didn't repeat myself. Just picked up my coffee and walked to the sink. She followed me, frantic now. "Silas, what did you do?" I turned around and met her eyes. She looked small. No makeup. Hair frizzy from sleep. No filters. No audience. Just the woman behind the damage. "You should probably call your boss before he calls you." That was the moment the illusion shattered. She dropped her phone. Literally. It slipped from her hand and clattered on the tile. I didn't flinch. She said my name 4 times. Each one softer than the last. And I just walked out the front door and sat on the porch while the morning sun started rising, like it had no idea my marriage was bleeding out on the kitchen floor. She didn't cry at first. That's what surprised me most. She stood there, frozen in front of the kitchen island like someone had pressed pause on her body. Her breathing didn't change. Her arms didn't move. She just stared straight ahead, like she could unhear what I said if she stood still enough. Then, 20 minutes later, after I came back in, stepped around the pieces of her dropped phone without a word, poured myself another cup of coffee like this was any normal Saturday. She disappeared into the bedroom. I waited and waited. Silence. I almost thought she fell asleep. I was naive enough to believe maybe it hadn't hit her yet. Maybe she thought I was bluffing. But when I walked past the cracked bedroom door to grab my hoodie from the chair, I heard it. Her voice. Soft. Shaky. Frantic. Not talking to herself. Talking to him. She was in the closet. On the floor. Trying to muffle the sound with hanging coats. I stopped moving. I didn't breathe. I just stood there like a coward, listening to my wife whisper to the man she cheated with. The man whose initials I found on the hotel laundry slip. The man whose birthday she remembered, but mine she forgot last year. I think he knows everything, she said. Pause. No, I didn't tell him. He said he sent it to HR. Another pause. Yeah, I don't know what they'll do. I'm screwed if this gets out. Screwed. She was screwed. Not me. The husband who'd just learned his wife was living a second life, like some low-budget drama. Not me, who had spent the last 4 months wondering if I was just going crazy, if I was inventing red flags out of boredom or insecurity. No, she was the one whose life might be inconvenienced. She didn't even say my name. Not once. Not. Silas is upset. Or Silas caught me. Or I broke Silas. Just he. Like I was a problem she needed to manage. I didn't confront her. Not then. I couldn't. My mouth wouldn't move, and my legs suddenly felt like wet sand. So I did what I do best. I left. Quietly. I grabbed the keys, stepped outside, and drove with no idea where I was going. I didn't take my phone. Didn't take my wallet. Just drove for hours until I ended up parked in a grocery store lot 3 towns over, sitting in the car like some guy who'd just been laid off and didn't know how to tell his family. I watched people come and go. Families buying snacks. Couples arguing over the wrong brand of paper towels. And I hated them, all of them, for having problems that weren't this. It hit me in that parking lot. She never really loved me the way I loved her. She loved the version of me that fit her storyline. The quiet guy. The supporter. The steady one who never caused a scene. The man she could introduce at networking events as my creative husband. You'd love his work and then leave out of all the real decisions. I was never her partner. I was her alibi. When I came back that night, something had changed. Not in me, in her. She was already dressed. Hair curled. Makeup on. Like she had somewhere to be. I need space, she said the moment I walked in. No hello. No explanation. No apology. I just nodded. She walked toward the door, heels clacking like punctuation. Right before she left, she turned and added, "Don't do anything stupid while I'm gone. Please. Please." Like I was the one spiraling. Like she was worried I'd ruined something. She left, and I sat in the same spot for hours, staring at the wall, wondering if I was about to become one of those men who lose themselves after being betrayed. Not the loud ones, not the dramatic ones, but the ones who quietly fade. But I didn't fade. I printed the second copy of the file. And this time, I didn't send it to her office. I sent it to someone else entirely. Someone who would take it personally. Someone she forgot I still talked to. The thing about being the quiet one in a relationship is people forget you have teeth. Rowan always treated me like background music. Comfortable. Familiar. Not dangerous. Her entire world was curated around the idea that I was too soft to ever push back. That I wouldn't make waves. That I'd absorb her damage and still show up with coffee the next morning. And I think that's why she never considered the ripple effect. She forgot I still had her sister's number. Tara. That's who I sent the second file to. See, what Rowan didn't realize is that her sister and I used to be close. Not in a weird way. No secrets, no tension, just genuinely close. Tara helped me pick out Rowan's engagement ring. She was the first person I told when I was thinking of proposing. And after the wedding, whenever Rowan would stay late at work, Tara was the one who'd text me memes, ask how Benny the dog was doing, or send me Spotify playlists titled, "You okay, bro?" I don't know if Rowan ever noticed how Tara's tone changed around her the past few months. How she started watching her more carefully at brunch. How she stopped laughing at Rowan's sarcastic digs and started redirecting the conversation. Tara knew, maybe not the full story, but enough to be suspicious. So when I sent her the folder, I didn't include a message. I didn't ask her to pick sides. I didn't even warn her what was inside. I just attached the screenshots, the audio file, and the name of the hotel. 10 minutes later, I got a one-word reply. Got it. That was all. But it was enough. Because 2 days after Rowan stormed out of the house, 2 full days of radio silence, no calls, no texts, no, I'm sorry, or let's talk, or even where's Benny? I got a knock at the door. Not Rowan. Tara. She looked furious. Like nuclear level, trench warfare furious. She stepped inside before I could even say anything, dropped her purse on the floor, and said, she's lying to everyone, and I'm done covering for her. It turns out Rowan had already done damage control. She'd told her parents we had a fight over finances, told her friends I'd gotten weirdly controlling lately, and started invading her privacy, told Tara, her own sister, that I had spiraled into jealousy and might be having a breakdown. I felt something inside me collapse at that. She was setting the stage, framing herself as the victim before the truth had a chance to breathe. And me? I was being painted as unstable, emotional, the classic oversensitive husband who couldn't handle a strong woman. Tara saw through it. She sat on my couch for 3 hours, filling in the blanks. The second phone Rowan kept in her glove compartment. The emergency client dinners she canceled family events for. The spa weekend in March that never actually happened. She used my name on the booking. Tara whispered, jaw clenched. I didn't even know until the hotel called about a forgotten necklace. I just nodded. Not surprised. Just tired. I told her everything. From the bathroom stall to the tie the dog found to the HR file and the second email I sent. She listened. Didn't flinch once. And then, in a voice that was suddenly much calmer, she asked, do you want to blow this up completely? Or just enough to ruin her safety net? It wasn't even a hard decision. I wanted her scared, not ruined. I wanted her to feel the ground shift under her feet the way mine had for months. To watch everything she thought she could control start slipping through her hands like wet sand. So Tara made the call. Not to Rowan. To Rowan's boss. They were old friends. College roommates, in fact. Something Rowan never thought would matter. She didn't see it coming. But it was coming fast. And the next time I saw her face, it would be behind the tinted window of a Blacktown car, trying to explain why she'd just been put on indefinite leave. When she showed up at my doorstep again, I could tell something had snapped. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon. The sky was gray in that soft, quiet way that feels like the world is holding its breath. I was upstairs rearranging the bookshelves, not out of necessity, but because doing something painfully mundane made it easier not to think. Then I heard her car. Not the usual smooth pull up to the curb like before. No, this was frantic. Tires against gravel. Doors slamming before the engine even stopped. She didn't knock. She banged. Silas. I didn't move. Silas, open the door. Eventually, I came down. I took my time. Let her knock herself breathless. And when I opened the door, I didn't say a word. Just stared. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her mascara was smudged. Hair pulled back in a messy bun she usually reserved for Sundays or cleaning days. She had on one of those power blazers she always wore to big meetings. But this one was wrinkled, like she hadn't taken it off in 3 days. They suspended me, she said without preamble. Do you have any idea what you've done? I raised an eyebrow. You mean aside from telling the truth? Her face twisted into something between rage and desperation. It's not that simple. You blindsided me. I could have handled this if you just talked to me first. I could have spun it. I interrupted, manipulated it, blamed me before I had the chance to speak. She flinched, visibly. I wasn't yelling, wasn't raising my voice. And somehow, I could tell it scared her more than if I had. Because I'd always been the calm one. The peacekeeper. The guy who folded laundry and never asked why she was home at midnight. Do you think this is revenge? She asked, quieter now. Is that what this is about? I wanted to laugh. Revenge? No. Revenge would have been uglier. Public. Scorched earth. This was precision. This is about honesty, I said. Something you've apparently been allergic to for a while. She paced. That nervous, twitchy pacing she did when she was trying to think for steps ahead. Like there was still a strategy, still a board game where she hadn't already lost. I told them it was exaggerated, she finally said. That you were emotionally unstable. That it was just a weird phase. A breakdown. Of course she did. And I asked, folding my arms. Her shoulders sank a little. And they didn't believe me. I stayed silent. They brought in HR, she continued, voice cracking slightly. The compliance officer. Even someone from legal. They asked about the trips. The expense reports. My messages. She looked up at me like she still couldn't believe it. They clapped when I left the room. Silas. I'm not even joking. I blinked. What? They didn't think I heard it. But I did. I was walking out and I heard someone say, finally. And then someone else laughed. And then clapping. She wasn't crying. Not fully. But her voice trembled like the edges were starting to rip. Like she was slowly realizing the version of herself she built. The career woman, the charming team player, the flawless high performer, was cracking open in front of everyone. I thought they liked me, she whispered. I nodded slowly. So did I. We stood there in silence for a while. She didn't ask to come inside. Didn't even look past the threshold. She knew the door wasn't hers anymore. After a few minutes, she said, What do you want from me, Silas? I didn't answer right away. Because honestly, I didn't know. I didn't want her back. That much was clear. But there was a twisted kind of satisfaction in watching her unravel. Not because she was in pain, but because she finally had to feel something real. I want you to feel what I felt, I finally said. Every time I wondered why you weren't home. Every time I made excuses for you. Every time I sat alone at dinner with cold food and colder doubts. She opened her mouth, but I stopped her with one raised finger. And I want you to stop pretending you're the victim in a story you wrote. She stepped back. Her eyes went flat. And for a moment, I saw the mask go back on. The corporate confidence, the controlled expression, the woman who could lie through her teeth and still smile through it. But it didn't hold this time. She left without another word. Just turned, got into her car, and drove off slower than she came. But not before looking in the rearview mirror one last time. Like maybe she expected me to chase her. I didn't. I closed the door, locked it, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. 3 days passed before I heard her name again. I was doing laundry, folding socks into mismatched pairs like I always did when I didn't care enough to find the actual matches, when the doorbell rang. Not a knock, a ring. Short, sharp, intentional. I wasn't expecting anyone. And when I opened the door and saw who it was, my hands went cold, even though they were still warm from the dryer. It was her mother, Vivian. Not the type of woman who visits unannounced. Not the type who ever really liked me, to be honest. She tolerated me, treated me like the oatmeal of her daughter's life. Bland, but supposedly good for her. And yet there she was, on my porch, holding a pie, an actual pie. May I come in? She asked. I moved aside, still stunned. She walked in like it wasn't the first time in months, like we hadn't all silently agreed to stay in our own corners after the wedding photos went up and the thank you cards were mailed. She placed the pie on the kitchen counter without asking, looked around, and finally said, She told us you were having a mental breakdown. I didn't respond. She told us you were unstable, that you'd fabricated the affair, that you'd hacked her emails and staged the evidence. I crossed my arms. Waited. She said it with tears in her eyes, Vivian added, almost quietly. And for a minute, we believed her. I did, because I wanted to. There was something unfamiliar in her voice, not pity, exactly, more like regret. Then, she said, Tara called. Of course she did. Vivian didn't sit. She remained standing, as if sitting would soften the purpose of her visit. She forwarded the files. She told me to look at the metadata myself. I did. It was all there. The hotel, the text logs, the recordings. Still, I said nothing. She's been lying for months, hasn't she? I gave a small nod. More than that. Vivian closed her eyes and sighed. Not dramatically, not theatrically, just the kind of sigh you let out when something you feared turned out to be exactly as bad as you suspected. She always wanted to be the kind of woman who had options, she muttered, almost to herself. I just didn't realize her definition of options included destroying her marriage. Then she looked at me directly. I'm not here to defend her. I'm not even sure I'm here to forgive her. But I am here to say that I know what it's like to be made small by someone who thinks love is a game of leverage. That landed harder than I expected. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. We stood in that quiet kitchen together for a full minute before she finally asked, What are you going to do? I shrugged. I already did it. Vivian gave a tired smile. Then let me do something too. She pulled out her phone, dialed a number, and put it on speaker before I could object. "Hi, Rowan. It's Mom." A pause. "No, I'm not calling to console you. I'm standing in Silas's kitchen, by the way. Just had his coffee. Better than yours." Another pause. I couldn't hear Rowan's voice, but I could feel it through the line. The rising panic, the disbelief, the realization that someone else had shifted sides. "You lied to us," Vivian said plainly. "You weaponized your father's sympathy. You used me as your emotional shield. And you know what? You almost had me. But you forgot one thing." A longer pause this time. "Then, you forgot your sister doesn't play dumb." She hung up. No dramatics. No last words. Just a clean break. The kind Rowan never expected from her own mother. Vivian looked at me one last time, and before she left, she said, "She'll come back eventually. Not for love. For damage control. For reputation. For the version of you she wants to edit. Don't let her." Then she was gone, and I stood there, staring at the pie she left behind, wondering how many people were collateral damage in a story Rowan thought she controlled completely. That night, I got a voicemail from Rowan. Just 6 words. "You turned my family against me." No apology. No admission. No self-awareness. Just blame. Still clinging to the idea that she was the one wronged. And in that moment, for the first time since this whole thing began, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the version of her that could say that, after everything, wasn't someone I missed anymore. I didn't respond to her voicemail. Not because I didn't have anything to say. I did. God, I did. There were whole paragraphs echoing in my brain. Bitter lines. Final zingers. All the things I'd rehearsed saying to her face if she ever had the nerve to show up again. But I didn't need to say them anymore. Because the truth was already doing what it needed to do. Quietly. Steadily. Like water wearing down stone. In the days that followed, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Stillness. Not the kind that feels like you're holding your breath, waiting for another blow. The kind that feels like the noise has finally stopped. Her things were still in the house. She hadn't come to get them. I told her in one final text that I'd pack everything up, label the boxes, and leave them with the front desk at her office. No conversation. No argument. No drama. She never replied. I boxed up her life in 2 evenings. Funny how small a marriage looks once it's reduced to coats, shoes, half-empty perfume bottles, and framed photos that don't feel honest anymore. The hardest thing to pack was Benny's leash. She always said he was our baby, but she hadn't asked about him once since she left. Not once. He lay beside me the entire time I packed, head on his paws, eyes watching every move like he was waiting for something to make sense again. But nothing needed to make sense anymore. It just needed to be over. The day I dropped off her boxes, I didn't go inside the building. I handed them off to security, gave my name, and walked out into a city that felt completely new. And I think that's where this story really ends. Not in betrayal. Not in confrontation. Not even in revenge. It ends on a quiet park bench 2 blocks from the office where I used to wait to pick her up. A bench I avoided for months because it reminded me of what I thought we had. But this time, it felt different. I sat down. Benny lay beside me, tail thumping once as if to say, "Yeah, this is better." I pulled out a small notebook I hadn't touched in years, the one I used to sketch in back before I started freelancing full-time. And I just started drawing. Nothing fancy. No deep meaning. Just lines and light and air. And I remembered that I used to be a whole person before her. That I had dreams that didn't revolve around being supportive or stable or the quiet one. I could be messy. I could take up space. I could start over. And maybe, just maybe, it didn't make me bitter or broken, just free. A week later, Tara texted me a photo of Rowan standing outside her parents' house. Alone. Dressed in all black, like she was attending her own reputation's funeral. The caption said, "She's still rewriting the ending. Let her." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because for once, I wasn't trying to win. I wasn't trying to fix it. I was just living. And the quiet wasn't empty anymore. It was mine.